Okay, so here we are. Basically, the engine bay is in really good shape. Firewall, valance, inner fenders, no sign of any damage. Cleanest inner fender I've seen. No holes from hanging stuff on it. Cross member's good. This perch point has some rust, but I think we can just patch that. Radiator support actually looks pretty good. No real signs of battery acid getting through there. See a little bit of damage that was done there, but by and large, the front end, as far as you can see, it looks pretty good. The lower valance, fortunately I don't have this up on the hoist to look at it, but there's some rust in the lower part of the valance, so we'd have to replace this section in here. There's a little dent over here. There's my thumb. Big dent right over there. Now let's get into it. So, decent dent right there. Wheel wells are in nice, good shape there, but we've got some damage and some rust along here. Anything from here down would be no big deal because we would be replacing from here all the way along for the rockers. But the fact that we've got this rust in here and this prior damage, those are basically where it was dented and then they pulled it. So my sense is that we're going to have to probably wisest to replace this fender. So that's one thing. A little bit of damage in here, but the rest of the door actually doesn't look too bad. I'll get with Nate, but I'm thinking we'd probably retain that. Retain the door. So, in terms of good news, as you can see along this A-pillar here, we've seen serious rust along here in the past. That's not been the case all along the edge here. We've even had bad rust up in this area where water's collected and can't get out. Sorry for the focus, but at any rate, A-pillar is stellar. Again, a shot of the front valance there. A lot of times that gets all rotted out because of water sitting. That's not an issue there. Down to the B-pillar, little more than surface rust, but still plenty solid in there. A lot of times this is totally rotted out. Same goes for the C pillar. You'll see on the other side that we will have some rot, but this side is nice and clean. Got a little bit of rust right down there, but again, when we go to replace the rockers, we're going to cut here and remove everything from here down, so that's non-issue. For what it's worth, you'll see the difference on the other side, but the sill, pardon me, the sill itself actually is pretty solid, but that belies what's going on inside. The rest of the B-pillar looks good. Now we get into what we're seeing on the back end. Obviously, this has been brazed in here, and So this section was replaced, and you can see some rust forming in there. Now you can take and cut that out. I'm again going to talk to Nate about this, but he may be able to work with this stitching. There's nothing really wrong with it. Just happens to be there. Obviously, this rust in here would have to be cut out and replaced. It's going to depend more so on how the inner fender looks as far as how to approach it. But other than that, the back side of this fender actually looks pretty good. A lot of times this is all rotted out down here, but not the case, but presumably because they replaced this section back here. The rest of this is pretty straight. Again, you can see the door, a little bit of a dent there. This stuff, that's not a dent. It's just a not a shadow, but some call it staining, I guess. That looks like it's a dent. But anyway, so that's that. Again, some pounding that wasn't dealt with very well, so this would all get cleaned up. Again, this is a discussion that I have to have with Nate as to how best to handle this. I'm hoping he would say that he can just work with this, but he may say, no, I want to replace it. So we'll see. Other than that, again, going to the rear windshield. Again, very clean along here, up along here. Oh, come on, focus. All the way down and around there. No rust at all. One small pinhole, relatively pinhole-ish pinhole, but that easily gets cut out and repaired. Not a big deal. No big surprise there. Almost every tub is rusted out, whether it's a little or big. So that the expectation was that we'd have to replace that anyway. And turn on the flash so that we can see a little bit better, because now we're getting into some of the stuff that I wasn't expecting, which is this trunk area. That right here, that's just sand sitting. That's not a hole, but regardless, the rest of it, you can see, is pretty well damaged. And you can see how this is damaged and wrinkled here. So obviously it got hit in the back. Not a surprise for a 50-year-old car, but disappointing. Let's see if I can get better. So odd stuff going on over here that's torn. So basically the back end of this trunk area is not looking great. The rest of it looks fine. This, what looks like distortion, I guess it is distortion, but that's just typical. That's the way it came out of the factory, so that's not a big deal. So again, discussion with Nate as to how best to handle this. One way is to completely replace the whole trunk floor. Another way would be to take a portion of it. Another way would be to see if you can hammer all that in and patch those areas there. So we'll have that discussion. The rear valance, the upper part of the rear valance actually, focus, looks pretty good, but you can see down below there, not so good. Pretty typical mess here. This is completely roached, as Nate would say, but that's, again, not unexpected. There is a, well, I can't show it easily, but on this side, here, on this side, there is actually an inner and an outer plate that comes together at the bottom of the door, or excuse me, bottom of the fender, and that's where everything accumulates. So 99 out of 100 of these cars have this thing to be replaced. Otherwise, not sure why they were doing some brazing in here. Obviously, actually, what they probably did, now that I think of it, is they probably replaced this panel here. It probably got hit here, so they replaced that section, replaced this section. The rest of this is all virgin, if you will. So, you can see some rust there, which is above where we would normally cut to replace these lower panels. There's a little bit, there's some dent work there that not unusual, I guess I want to say. And then we do have this rusted section in here, which is not unusual either. Probably more unusual that the other side was as clean as it was. There are panels, repair panels that come, from here all the way forward to the front of the B pillar. Excuse me. Again, B pillar doesn't look like it's in too bad a shape. Couple little rust holes, which will easily be attended to. And then the rest of the fender actually looks pretty good. So again, this is one of these questions. Do we, repair this area, repair this area, repair this area, repair that area? And regardless, this would, when we do the rockers, this gets cut out anyway. So you've got, patch, 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 or do we just replace it with a whole new rear fender? And I mean, it is a cost issue, no question about it, but something that we first, I've got to talk to Nate about it, then you and I need to discuss it. So looking back forward again, can't see, but this door, we're going to need to replace the skin on this door. Can't really see, there's some rust there, rust along the bottom, and rust in that corner there, and then a punch hole there, which is kind of weird. Don't know what that's about. As far as I can tell, the frame itself is fine, so we only have to deal with the skin. So if you recall what it looked like on the other side, this side does not look like that. You can see all kinds of rust in the sills, which is really no big deal because we certainly had expected to replace the rockers here. Okay, on the bright side, what the heck is that? This back end is actually in really good shape. A lot of times over here above where the muffler goes, this can be all rusted out, but you can see where the holes, the drain holes and everything are in really good shape there, so that's good. I won't bother, but the other side, this passenger side here is fine as well. This rarely is problematic, and in this case it is not problematic. It looks like it's fine. Here's where we get into the worst of it. There we go. This is the inner fender, inner rocker, And as you can see, as it progresses up front, the holes in the floor are no big surprise. We'd expect to replace the floors, but the inner rocker is a little disappointing. I had hoped that it would be in better shape. And pretty similar on the other side there. You can see where that is kind of a mess. So, and if the inners are gone like that, and we'd expect the outers, well, we don't expect, we know that we would replace the outers, then we'd also be replacing the middle rockers. So what we're looking at is replacing the floors, both sides. You can see that there's holes there. Technically, you could get away without replacing this one, but I think from a practical standpoint, we should replace them all. So the front rear floors, the inner, middle, and outer rockers would have to be replaced. So that's basically, my expectation was that we'd have to replace the floors and the outer rockers. So it's the middle and the inner rockers that have to be done. I say have to be done. There are options, but my recommendation would be to replace those. What was I going to say about that? Well, I guess that's all I need to say on that right now. This surprisingly can be nasty rusted, and it's not. It's in excellent condition. Again, the tunnel is in excellent condition. A lot of times we see damage from drive shafts exploding or bell housings, flywheels exploding. But this looks, factory fresh, so that's encouraging. Okay, on this fender here, you can see it's rusted down here, but we would naturally remove this section here in order to do the sills, because what happens actually is the outer sill actually dives underneath this fender. So in order to replace the outer sill, we have to cut this off. So it's all part of the process. So there's nothing unusual about that. The rest of this fender actually is in pretty fair shape. You can see, you can see the rust on that lower section of the valance there. So that lower piece would have to be replaced, which is not unusual. As you can well imagine, the lower areas would collect crud, moisture, and ultimately rust. And again, you can see a little dent there. That shouldn't be a problem. Dent here, that won't be a problem. This took a little bit of, it's hard to see on the video, but that took a little bit of it. But the front end is, by and large, pretty good. For what it's worth, the roof is perfect. We've had a spate lately of messed up roofs, so that is pretty much it. Somebody at the door knocking, but I'll get that in a second. Anyway, these are the powder coated, sandblasted suspension in sundry pieces. Everything looks good, clean, no particular problems that we see so far with that. This all, of course, gets disassembled, painted, and powder coated. And that's the tail of the tape.